Hello, I'm Alexia, and let me help you to take the fear out of birth with a mix of real-life positive birth stories and birthing experts sharing their wisdom. I'll also be sharing techniques for getting into the fearless birthing mindset. And join the Fearless Momship community for bonus podcast episodes, access to free birth preparation downloads, and loads more stuff to help you to prepare for a positive birth. Join today at fearfreechildbirth.com. Hello and welcome back to the Fear Free Childbirth podcast. This is me, your host, Alexia Leachman, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now, this week is a little bit of an exciting week at Fear Free Childbirth HQ because we're running the Fearless Birth Prep Challenge. If you've been listening over the last few weeks, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, let me just give you a quick recap. Basically, it's a 5-day challenge for pregnant mamas to help them to prepare for their birth. Now, obviously, you can't get all of your birth prep done in 5 days, but it's giving some clear direction and some steps to follow, and at least to come out with a clear plan of knowing what you've still got to do and feeling a little bit clearer about what your decisions are. So that's what the Fearless Birth Prep Challenge is all about, and it's still running. It finishes tomorrow. So if you do want to join us, there is still time. We have got tons of people sharing their stories about what they're doing for their Fearless Birth Prep Challenge. And we've also had a baby born already during the challenge. I don't know how many more we're going to be getting before the challenge finishes. But yes, it's all very, very exciting. So if you want to join, all you need to do is go to the Facebook page, the Fear Free Childbirth Facebook page, and there's a link to the group, and you'll be able to catch up on all the posts and all the Facebook Live videos that have been running this week. We're running 2 Facebook Live sessions every day as a minimum to help you. We're going to be tackling certain topics. So there's loads of things for you to check out in the Fear Free Childbirth Facebook group. And then also we're on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, come and find us on Instagram at Fear Free Childbirth. There we'll be sharing some stories from the challenge there too, and lots of lovely photos as well of pregnant mamas. So do come and check us out on Instagram at Fear Free Childbirth. Okay, now today's episode. This episode for today is fabulous. Today I'm going to be talking about gentle C-sections. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast already, you'll remember that I did share a positive birth story that was a gentle C-section quite a while back. Well, the person I'm speaking to today is the OB that helped make that gentle C-section happen. So, it's my OB from my local hospital here in Nottingham, because my Nottingham Home Birth Group is a wonderful resource for me in terms of interviews for my podcast. I've got lots of people that have been guests that I know through my local home birth group. So today I'm going to be speaking to Andy Simm, who is an OB who is quite passionate about the gentle C-section and trying to improve C-section experiences for women. So today we are going to be talking all about C-sections. We're going to not only talk about the gentle C-section and a really good checklist for you to think through as you're planning your section if you want to have a gentle C-section, but we're also going to be talking about the risks of C-section as well. And also I'm pretty thrilled because he's the first OB that I've had on the podcast, and he's such a lovely guy. So really, really lovely. I think there's really important points that he raises as well about how you communicate with your hospital care team, your healthcare providers, to get the best out of them, because I know that I get a lot of emails from you saying, oh, I don't trust the medical staff and I've got a real fear of medical staff. Well, they're worried about being pressured into making decisions by your medical staff. Well, we need to take responsibility and communicate with them in a clear, calm way too. So he gives some really good pointers on that. So it's a really great chat, and there's so much there that I think we can all learn from. Whether or not you're planning to have a C-section, C-sections are always going to be a plan B or C as part of your birth plan. So listening to this episode, having a really good understanding of C-sections. If you've got a fear of C-sections, then listening to what he's got to say so that you don't have a fear of them, because there's no point in having a fear of C-sections, then this is just such a great episode to listen to for all these reasons. So it really is for everyone. Okay, enough of me wittering on. Now, here is when I spoke to Andy Simm all about gentle C-sections and lots more. Welcome, Andy, to the Fear Free Childbirth podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I'm delighted to come.
Well, this is fabulous. So, Andy, we are going to talk about gentle C-sections, among other things. But before we do all that, would you mind just introducing yourself to the listeners and telling us a little bit more about what you do and why you do what you do?
So I'm a consultant obstetrician in Nottingham, where I've been for 15 years now. My areas of interest, I guess, are diabetes and endocrine disorders, small babies. So I scan small babies, and labour ward management, really. I love being on a labour ward, actually. And so I guess that's where I undertake caesarean sections, but I guess that's where I got into doing these gentle caesarean sections, because I realised that a lot of women, their experience is not as good as they would want it to be.
What got you into this line of work then?
So what got me into obstetrics?
Yeah. Like, why did you choose to specialise in that?
I see, it's difficult to say, actually. I've got this feeling that I had a predilection to doing this from probably being a teenager, because I remember listening to someone at church who was a missionary, and they did some obstetric work, and I remember thinking, wow. And also I remember listening to Michel Odont as well, or watching a TV program with him in, and I still can picture him. I still can picture the birth.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that's amazing. So bizarre. And I never thought I would ever become a doctor, because no one in the family was a doctor. So I never thought I'd be good enough to do it.
Oh.
And then I did it.
And here you are.
And here I am. Yeah. So my dream came true, really.
Brilliant. And
yeah.
so it's a bit of a calling for you then, really, what it sounds like.
I think it was, probably. You're right. Yeah.
Brilliant,
I think it was.
So you said you really like working on the labour ward and being on a labour ward. What is it that you like about a labour ward then?
So I think I like the bit of A&E type stuff sometimes, that quick decision making, that bit of an adrenaline junkie.
Okay.
You get that buzz from that, getting a good outcome from that most of the time. And so, yeah, I think it makes it a bit different to the other bits of obstetrics, which are much more perhaps calmer, clinic orientated.
We're going to talk about gentle C-section. So before we carry on sort of using this term, banding it about, some people might be listening and they might not actually know what that is. So before we sort of continue any further, would you mind just kind of explaining what a gentle C-section is?
No, I can try. So I only learned about it a few years ago, and because I got asked to do one. That's where I learned about it, and I went and looked it up, and the paper that was written in the British Journal of Obs and Gynae that was in 2008, and they called it the natural caesarean section. And I think people aren't so keen on the term natural, because how can you make a caesarean section natural in a way? I understand where they're coming from, but what they're trying to say was, what we want to do is make a caesarean into something that's much more akin to an experience that a woman might have at a natural birth. So she's got an element of involvement, I guess. Usually I think she just feels as though the whole scenario is taken away from her, and she's a bystander within it. And so it incorporates a whole combination of you play your own music, and you can do that for any caesarean section. You play your own music, you have the leads on the back of your chest for ECGs so that your baby can go straight to the chest. So it incorporates Skintoskin, which again to be a part of all caesareans really, and all births if possible. It incorporates where you get the baby to effectively come out more slowly. So I guess this is a bit where theoretically you get a bit of squeezing of the fluid out the baby's lungs by a slow delivery. So you deliver the head and one shoulder and then just wait. And often you give the drug to help delivery of the placenta is often given at this point, but you just wait and the uterus contracts slowly and gradually the baby gets delivered. out of the uterus without any assistance from us at all. That's the bit that's really so different.
So rather than kind of like hoiking the baby out, like lifting the baby out or pulling the baby out, you just let the baby wriggle out on their own.
You do.
Basically. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you try and transfer the baby straight to the mother's chest. So you pass it to the midwife who's scrubbed in, and she puts it to the mother's chest. You keep the cord intact. You defer the cord clamping. And then after that, you carry on with your caesarean section as normal, really, with an anaesthetist at the top who is crucial because they're the ones who are the chatty ones, really. They.
So you've just talked about lots of things there that are important aspects of birth, like delaying of the cord clamping and the skin to skin. And I'm just wondering, why is it that more C-sections aren't like this anyway?
Yeah, you're right. I think it's just change. It's just challenging change, tradition, and the tradition is there's an element within our profession sometimes that the speedier the surgeon, it's almost an accolade that if you do the quickest section, you're doing well,
Really?
You're making it. And that's not, that shouldn't be the case. It really shouldn't. So it's change. It's difficult to effect change, I think. There's lots of traditional things, the less time you have the abdomen open, the less the risk of infection. And that's probably true to an extent, but we're only talking about adding a few minutes here. We're not talking about long periods of time extended. And then I get colleagues who then say, well, you're going off to do your gentle section, so I do barbaric ones then, do I? Well, no. So it's hard to know what the right terminology is, because you offend people if you sometimes, or offend colleagues sometimes with the terminology we use.
Yeah.
But change is hard. Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, is it possible that all C-sections could be gentle, or when there's certain emergency situations that you really can't really be gentle, that you just it's not really an option? So what kind of is that the case?
Yeah, you're right. I think that's true. I think if you had a situation perhaps where you had massive amount of bleeding and you had to go in quickly, or you had a baby whose heart rate had been slow for quite a period of time and you really needed to go in quick, I think those really aren't amenable. The key thing is speed, get in, get the problem dealt with, and I really wouldn't advocate it at all for those. But I think a large number are amenable to it, larger than we think, probably.
Because you hear a lot of women that end up having to have an emergency C-section when they find out on the day that baby's breech. And so they might have been labouring for a while and suddenly it's, baby's breech, we need to get you in for section. So in a situation like that, a woman could have a gentle C-section in that situation? So
she could have quite a few elements of it. I think the one problem with breeches, of course, is they're coming the wrong way round. So the issue of squeezing the fluid doesn't work because the head's the last bit to come out in a way. You know what I mean? So it's all the wrong way round, really. Now, some people then say, could you turn the baby in utero and then deliver it? And maybe you could, but then I think you're getting into the realms of, is that really beneficial to do? So the breech one, possibly not, but you could do everything else. You could do the early skin to skin, the deferred cord clamping, all of those things. And the other thing is actually some women want to watch the birth. So you drop the drapes. My experience by dropping the drapes is, they still don't quite see enough because they've got a bump in front of them. So we tried it with mirrors. We've got a little mirror that we try and use to help them see, and they found that quite useful. So those situations, there's a few things you can adopt and a few things perhaps you can't.
Okay, so the main features then of a gentle C-section are, so it's having the environment that you're having a part to play in that. So there's the music, so the women can request like low lighting, maybe fairy lights or something in the room.
Yeah, we haven't gone that far in a theatre, but maybe you could. We do drop the lights, so the big lights, operating lights, clearly we need them on for the surgery, but once the baby's head's delivered, you can drop those down and make it a much dimmer environment while the baby comes out. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And then put them back on once we're sewing up.
Yeah. I mean, in my head, I'm just imagining that maybe I'm giving my age away here, but there's some big DJs back in the day when I used to go out clubbing quite a lot called Orbital, where they had little torches on their glasses, that like almost like little head torches.
Oh, yeah.
Could you have that kind of scenario where, you got little torches on your head rather than the big lights so you can see what you're doing?
Maybe we could. I think the neurosurgeons go along that route sometimes. Maybe we could. So, yeah, I've not tried that one yet. I think there's still places we could go where we haven't been yet.
So we've got the lighting situation, then you've got the music, and then the other aspects you mentioned is letting the baby come out of on their own accord, which might be the element that might get sacrificed if it's an emergency situation. Is that what you're saying? That bit. But then the other bits you can keep are maybe the skin-to-skin, the delayed cord clamping. Anything else I've missed there? What other elements are there that can be taken into account?
No, pretty much they are the principal elements. You're right. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think almost what I'm thinking of doing is devising almost a checklist that you could go through with women before a section, certainly for an elective section, a planned one, and say, look, which bits of this would you like and which bits would you not? Because women say, I really don't want to see it. I just don't want to see it. But I'd like skin to skin, So you could perhaps adapt things for them depending on what they want, really. So it gives them some degree of control.
Yeah.
But you're right, a lot of it's about the environment and the communication and all of those things. Just helping them to feel involved, I think. Yeah.
And I know there's one person I spoke to who, one thing that she really appreciated, I think the anaesthetist or somebody that was there during her emergency C-section narrated the birth to her and talked her through what was going on.
Yeah.
And because she couldn't see, would it be the anaesthetist? And she really appreciated that, almost having a narrator. And she said that doesn't happen. And I've never heard of a birth narrator. And I don't know if it is. Is it a thing? Is that not a thing? I don't know.
Some anaesthetists are very good at going through bit by bit what's happening and talking it through if they want to. You're right. So some women like that. Yeah. Some women like you just to chat about anything else but the surgery. And then once the baby's out, they're overawed by the baby. So then that, that takes their mind into another realm, really. Yeah.
So that could be on the checklist then, and a bit like, would you like somebody to narrate your birth for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. To help her feel more involved, actually.
Yes.
I think the one thing I'm picking up is the gentle C-section thing is just to help the woman feel like, rather than her just being on an operating table and being done to, in inverted commas, that she's taking part and involved and she's involved. Yeah, she's in it really, isn't it really? So that she doesn't feel.
Absolutely, you've got it bang on the head. Yeah.
So it's anything that she can do to feel more involved. So if she can be talked it through, then that can be. Then that can help. So, okay, so we've got a little checklist forming in our heads. This is brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking I don't know much about C-sections. I didn't have C-section myself. The difference then between the planned and the elective, the planned and the emergency, is there any major difference that anybody needs to take into consideration from a gentle perspective between those two? Does it change anything?
I guess the difficulty then is, who's going to do your procedure, and have they bought into the philosophy, I guess.
Okay.
So I've got some colleagues who are a little bit cynical perhaps about about the whole thing. I don't know why, to be honest.
Yeah, I was like, really? Like, don't they? Have they not read about birth?
Because I think, to be honest, I think lots of us are learning, and it's through social media, really, is that actually what matters to a lot of women is the experience. And, it's not what we were taught as doctors, really, about the technicality. We've got the technicality. We know that. We know what we're doing. It's actually about making the experience different. And that's true for any birth. And I've learned so much through social media. I will look at notes and say, she had a straightforward ventouse delivery, lift out delivery vaginally. Why is she here saying this was an issue? And then you talk to her, and it was a total horrendous experience for her. And you, wow, that's amazing. So I've read lots of stories like that, and it's made me think that actually sometimes it's not. A lot of it could be the way she was spoken to on the day, the way she was involved, the way, made to feel a bit like a bit of a slab of meat on a table, that sort of thing. So it's made me really realise that it matters. The experience matters. I've been to Ethiopia and I've seen things there, and women are treated very differently there. And, on the operating table, they're tied down and it feels horrible. And I've seen women, and just talking to them or touching them and really makes them feel different, so they feel cared for in a way. So I've learned loads through those sort of things, and it's changed the way I practice, I think.
Oh no, go on.
No, I think quite a few of my colleagues are seeing that as well. They are changing in the way they practice. Yeah.
So you're saying that basically when you train, you don't kind of learn, it's all very technical. There isn't the whole way that the woman might be feeling isn't really, that's not part of what you're learning in your training. Is that what you're saying?
Not so important. It's changing. The human factors element is definitely coming in much more than when I was training.
Yeah.
There's a new emphasis now, which is great.
Yeah. No, that's really good to hear, because I certainly, I'm sure you have spoken to a lot of women that have had those difficult experiences that are down to the way that they're treated, essentially.
Yeah.
And that makes such an impact. Even the use of language and how the woman, what words are used and the tone, the tonality, and that is such a huge part of that birth experience. And it surprises me to hear that isn't made more of an emphasis, because of it's things like that that do make that make or break that experience for that woman. And and I'd love to think that that it's brilliant that this change is happening, but what more can we do to kind of speed this up or get the message out? Because you mentioned that some of your colleagues don't get it, and it's like, I don't know, how can they not get it? I'm kind of bewildered by that. I'm like, the experience is everything,
There's still a little bit of our specialty is very different, because there's a lot of choice now come into our specialty, whereas if you listen to a general surgeon, tell someone about their gallbladder with gallstones, they're very sort of, we're going to remove it, There isn't a sort of, well, we could remove it, or we could leave it be, but you might run into problems, So it's interesting because some of my colleagues are still a little bit older school in the, well, I really think you should do this,
Yeah.
But actually the woman says, but I don't want to do that, So we're learning all the time, and we're learning. I'm not dobbing my colleagues in.
No, I know you're not. I'm not suggesting it for a minute.
We are all learning at different rates in a way about what's best.
What could I don't know if there's anything a woman could do. Is there anything that I say we here I am representing womanhood, pregnant women, that we can do to help bring some, these guys that maybe a little, I say guys, they might not all be guys, these people that are a little bit more old school in thinking, what could we do to help speed this process up so that more women can improve those experiences that they're having in those environments?
Tricky question.
Tricky question. I've put you on the spot now, haven't I?
Yeah, I have. But there's certain things. So you know how the way people speak. So the way we speak to people can put their backs up, definitely. You know, but equally sometimes the way the woman tries to put across her choice can put our backs up. So say you get a woman who comes into the consulting room and she sits down and she says, "I'm going to have a caesarean section," and you think, "Are you?" You know, where's that discussion been? Whereas if she came in and said, "You know, I'm really thinking about a caesarean section, but I'm really wondering what you think about that," instantly I am melted, you know, because I think, oh, they're asking my opinion, you know, that matters, that's good. So there's ways that they can talk to us that is really sort of helpful, I think, in softening us up. And equally, there's ways we can speak to them that's important about offering choice. So it's a two-way sort of process.
No, and I think I love that you said that, because it is so important, rather than kind of marching in with demands, being a bit more co-creative about the process and going, right, this is what I want. What do you think? La, 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 la. And so to have that happening from both sides would be an ideal, wouldn't it, really?
It would, definitely, yeah.
But then you do have, I mean, you know, certainly with my own pregnancy experience, where I get, like, we're going to do this and this and this to you. It's like, whoa, hang on a minute. No, you're not. Like, when, you know, and it's like, you know, and then you immediately got to really kind of like put your foot down and get kind of, you know, put me in, I want to speak to your boss kind of thing, because this is not washing with me. So it's, so I think both sides need to kind of take that co-creative, I say co-creative, I don't know what other way, collaborative approach.
Yeah, collaborative
approach to that birth decision making. And
one of my colleagues who deals with people who often have had traumatic experiences and want a caesarean section, she's very good, because she'll approach it with, if you want a caesarean section, I will do it. So let's start our conversation with I will do it. But let's explore your reasons for asking. And instantly that will help them to come down, because they think, gosh, I'm not in a battle now. I've got my request. But actually in the exploring bit, sometimes they change things round, and you can perhaps come to a different feeling at the end. So that's a really good way of, you know, for us to sort of try and do things, which is, you know, anything is on the table here. Let me not instantly say, oh, I'm not doing that. Which we could do.
Yeah. So what are the main reasons then that women request a C-section?
So there's the aside of the medical grounds, then I think it's often previous very poor experiences. And I'm trying to think other reasons why they might, where perhaps they have been involved in rape, or they're unusual though, things like that. I have seen that, but they're unusual. True tocophobia, a real fear of labour. Again, the odd person, but they're few and far between, to be honest. And some women, it's almost, you can't quite dig it out, you know. It's almost like, I want a different experience, so let's try this one. There can be a bit of control, you know. I really want my baby at this point in time. There's X, Y, and Z going on in my life. I need control. Often got other ways of helping with that. So lots of different reasons, I think, for women requesting caesarean section, aside of the medical reasons. And I think the commonest reason is they've had one before and they're worried about going through labour, you know. That's probably the commonest one I see.
So they're worried that the VBAC is high risk for them.
Yeah. They're worried. And it's that thing of, I don't know whether I'm going to achieve it. The last thing I want to do is end up in that emergency situation again, where it all is out of control, and it's just going to go wrong for me. That's the, I think, yeah.
So from your perspective, do you try and kind of coax them out of a C-section? Do you try and support them in one way or another? Or are you like, yay, let's go for the C-section. Let me try and rack up my C-sections for the month. I don't know if you've got like what's your like, or do you kind of, you're very neutral until you hear the woman's story that she presents to you? What's your
So
kind of perspective on it?
I used to be quite pro doing the VBAC. I used to be like, now come on, let's look at this other option that's here. But with the way the NICE guidelines are written now, which is very, very pro the choice of caesarean section, I'll still talk about both, but I'm much more, I'm open to what you want, I'll do what you want. So there are scenarios when I'm not so like that. So if there's a 20-year-old who's likely to have more children in the future, and, I think probably a ongoing caesarean sections, multiple caesarean sections probably isn't going to be helpful to her, then I'm going to push her a bit. Whereas a 40-year-old lady who's having her second baby, first one by caesarean, I'm very open. If she wants a section, she's having a section. That's absolutely fine. So there are little things that might make you go lean a bit, one way or another.
And so what about the risks of C-section? Would you mind, when we're thinking about, certainly from a pregnant woman perspective, you kind of think, in my head, I was tocophobic in my first pregnancy. So in my first trimester, I was like, yep, C-section, that's for me. That's what I'm having.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I was going to go for the C-section. And then, but I managed to overcome my fears and clear them. And within one trimester, I was like, I'm going for a home birth. And that's what I had. I had the home birth, and it was amazing.
Oh my word, you did change. Wow.
Yeah, no, completely. Yes, but I'm just wondering the
risk.
The risk, when you're balancing it up, like now with what I know about birth and how incredible the natural birth or vaginal, the natural processes and the euphoric and the buzz and the way the hormones support you and why it's good for baby and all, I'm much more informed about all this now. So now I'm in my head, I'm like, oh my goodness, C-section just feels like such a risky way to go if you don't absolutely need to for medical reasons. And I'm just wondering,
sure,
if you're much better placed than I am to talk about what some of those risks are of C-section versus if you are in a situation where there isn't a medical need and where you're borderline and maybe there is a bit of fear in there, but in my mind you can just clear fears. That can happen. You can do that very, very effectively now. So I want to do, in my mind, this is just me saying, I don't do everything I can now to avoid the C-section because I feel that's quite a risky bit of surgery. But can you just explain it maybe from your perspective, like how risky is it? What are the risks?
Yeah, that's always a tricky one because, there are risks, definitely, surgical risks. Fortunately, you normally start with a young, fit, healthy mother. So the likelihood is she's going to recover quick, she's focused on her baby. So, and so the recovery tends to be a good one, But the risks principally are infection. Anything from just a bit of redness to the wound, but anything up to quite significant severe infection. And we've certainly had a couple of people who've ended up back in theatre with debridement of wounds, even packing them and keeping them open. And that's nasty, It's so any degree of infection, you're probably talking up to 20% risk, It's quite high. Bleeding, clearly, because you don't just bleed from where the placenta comes away, you bleed from where we cut. So that's our prerogative to try and control that. And then thrombosis, because deep vein thrombosis is a risk from pregnancy, it's a risk from surgery, so just doing the two adds up that risk a bit. Injury to your bladder, because your bladder sits next to your uterus, so if you've had a couple of caesareans, that risk gets a little bit higher. And then the principal risk is really big but really rare, is the one where if you have a cesarean, the next time the placenta implants on the scar, and then you've got this placenta accreta situation. So you come to the birth, it doesn't separate, and then you get torrential bleeding when it does start to come away. And I was profoundly affected by being involved in a maternal death from that very, very cause, you know. And she'd only had one previous section, but for good medical reason, you know. But I do highlight it to women now, is you've got to realise that that's a potential risk for the future. And certainly if you're going on to have 3-4 caesarean sections, you know, don't go on and have big families if you're going to do it this way. And the gentle section doesn't take away any of that risk. You know, all of that remains. It's not changing the risk. It's changing the experience, but it's not changing the risk. Yeah.
But I think it's a really important thing to strive for, though, because a lot of women, like you said, are probably having a C-section because of their previous experience. They don't want to repeat. Whereas if they've had a positive birth experience, they come out feeling empowered, confident. Yeah. The whole mothering experience has started in a good way. Then they're probably going to have a lot more confidence to go back into their next birth and really try for the VBAC. So I think it really,
definitely,
you know, by going gentle can kind of really support them in their having more choices available to them next time round, I would have thought.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. There is this little critique that, you know, are you making caesareans more popular? You know,
are they already very popular?
And they are already popular, you're right. So do you, by making an experience better, make it more popular? But, you know, that's a poor argument, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
that doesn't stand up in my court, I'm afraid.
No, you know, you've got to make an experience better if you can.
Yeah.
And I don't particularly think that does really change the number of women who go on and have a section. You know, I think they're there having their section. They've decided on that. What they want then is an experience that's better.
Yeah. Now, you talked earlier about social media, how it's helping you and your colleagues maybe to understand birth better and shift your perspectives. And you are behind a viral video. So I just want to talk about that. We were chatting a little bit before we came on. Tell us about the viral video that went on Facebook.
So basically, this couple came from outside region to have their gentle section, having been not supported in their own unit, let's say. And I asked them if I could create a educational video. Would they mind? They were such a lovely couple, so open. So they were quite happy. They had no problem with that. So because of that, I said to him, well, although our policies and guidelines are not particularly supportive of you filming things, I haven't got a problem with it. So if you want to film it with your own phone, you go ahead and do it. So the dad filmed it with his own phone. He then sent it to a friend who's a doula and a birth supporter, and she sent it round to her friends. And within days, it had gone beyond anything she expected. So she was really, really worried, I think, because it went viral.
It went crazy. I mean, was it Sophie that shared it? Sophie Missagier?
It was.
Yeah, I remember that now. I do remember.
Do you know her?
Yeah, I do. I've interviewed her on the podcast, actually.
Great.
Yeah. So how many views has that video racked up then now?
So it's now racked up 10 million views. Wow. I've just checked it. 10 million. Quite incredible.
Amazing.
I was worried I was going to get in huge trouble with my medical director and be, you know, sent away in shame from the hospital, saying that should never have happened. But actually, because it hit, the Nottingham Post, the local paper, wanted a bit of a story on her coming and having the gentle section. But then all of this went out, and before the Post had got their story in, you know, this was in Cosmopolitan Online and and all glamour and all sorts.
Yeah.
But actually, because the story had a positive spin, I didn't get into trouble. I was fine. It was all okay. And actually, I think they quite liked it, really.
Yeah. So Nottingham's got a bit of is it a tourist destination now for gentle C-sections?
I've done 2 or 3 from people from other units.
Have
but
you?
Yeah, I've just not many,
no.
Fortunately. Yeah, I don't want to be, I don't want everyone pouring in.
No,
My boss wouldn't like that.
So I'm just, with these people coming in, it's staggering, really. They're doing that because their own unit aren't supporting them in those choices. That I find that quite shocking, actually. Should I be so shocked?
I think I'm surprised that some people say, and when I say people, I mean doctors, say they've not heard of it. So I've just had a text, not a text, an email sent to me just this weekend, just on an off chance saying, we're in another big city. I'll not say which one. And we were wanting gentle caesarean, and we asked our consultant, would they do that? And they said, ooh, I've not heard of that, but I can assure you that my sections are not traumatic. So. And they thought, oh dear, no, they haven't got this at all. So they just wanted to say, who do you know that might facilitate that? But so I am a bit surprised people haven't heard of it. But I think it's getting more and more recognition. And there's something only come out in the news just in the last few days. Have you seen that from an anaesthetist talking?
Oh, tell me. I did see that, but
So Felicity Platt is an anaesthetist she was involved in the initial paper that was written back in 2008. And she was speaking at an anaesthetic conference, and she's clearly talked about it there. So again, we've hit a bit of the limelight and the press again because of that. So all of these things I think are good things because they keep sort of raising the issue.
Yeah.
There's supposed to have been a trial done, but I don't know. I need to look into that a bit more and see whether there are any results from that or whether that's finished yet.
And I've just thought of something else that might be another thing on the checklist, and that's whether with all the research that's happening right now around the microbiome and swabbing or seeding, would that be something to add to the checklist? I know it's not conclusive, is it, the evidence around seeding yet, but there's a lot of things happening in obstetrics and birth that isn't got evidence behind it, so we can still go for so we could, that might be another thing that they might want to add to the checklist. Is that good?
So it could be. Fortunately, the 2 people who've asked me about doing this, both of them went away, had private swabs and had Group B strep on it.
Oh.
And they both came back to me and said, you're relieved, aren't you? I went, I am. Because they said, we're not doing it. Don't worry, we're not doing it. So I've never had that done. And I think I would probably say that's your thing to do. If you want to do it, you can do it. But I'm not particularly myself getting involved in that. There is still a bit of caution about that. You're right. But I think you're right. You could put that on the checklist. I agree.
Okay, well, I'm feeling a new little checklist coming on.
You told me about one other thing and I've forgotten it already. What was your other
narrating? The narration.
Narrating. Yeah. I've got to remember that.
No, well, I'm going to create a little checklist that people can come and download from the site. So, we need to maybe get this sent out to a little bit of the obstetric community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Andy, it's just been brilliant chatting. I've just seen the time and how long we've been chatting. And is there anything else about C-sections while we're chatting C-sections? And if there's anything else that you think, maybe a pregnant mama listening ought to know about C-sections or not, or when she's making those decisions to help have the most positive birth?
I think there is. We've talked about a lot. Sort of benefits. Benefits are always, it's interesting because we never used to talk about benefits when we did a consent form. You'd never really list a benefit. You'd always list all the risks. So there is a thing now that says, what are advantages of the surgery, and clearly it's a safe birth of the baby, and it's important the baby's born safely and that the mother's safe. If you can add on to that a really good experience from it, I guess it was. Now, you can't prove that's your gentle section, but I've had a few babies and noticed it, that they come out, they go straight to the mum's chest. There isn't any squalling or screaming. They're calm, settled, and that's great. That's great. So I don't think I've got much more to say. I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Andy, for coming on the Fear-Free Childbirth podcast.
No problem. It's great to have been on it. Thank you for inviting me.
Wasn't Andy brilliant? It was about time I had somebody talking about C-sections on the show. And I think that if you've got a fear of C-sections, listen to what Andy was saying. And particularly if you can plan for a gentle C-section, even if you're having an emergency C-section or one that isn't planned, then I hope that's going to help you to feel a little bit more positively about C-sections. Now, also, just to recap before I go, don't forget, if you want to join us on the Fearless Birth Prep Challenge, it finishes tomorrow. It's not too late to join. There are tons of Facebook Live sessions that we've been running in the Facebook group all week. Things on natural birth, the stages of labour, mindset. We've had Sophie Fletcher from Mindful Hypnobirthing dropping in as well. So yeah, lots and lots happening in the Facebook group. So don't forget to come and stop by and say hello and catch up on your fearless birth prep. Okay, that's it for me. I'll be back next week. Bye for now. You've just been listening to me, Alexia Leachman, here on the Fear-Free Childbirth podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now, this is just a wee reminder that if you'd like to listen to bonus podcast episodes and have access to loads of birth preparation downloads, my video mini-series on reducing your fears and so much more, then join the Fearless Mumship community today. You can join at fearfreechildbirth.com. Until next time, bye for now.